Ever feel like you're just stuck on this treadmill, chasing all these goals, bombarded by information 24/7, and never quite catching up?
Oh, yeah, I hear you. It's a pretty common feeling these days.
Well, get ready, because today we're diving deep into what we're calling the modern matrix. All those pressures and systems that can make life feel like a maze we can't escape.
Amaze is a good way to put it. And the really fascinating thing is that we've got 7 thinkers who offer these unique, almost like tools, to see through all the illusions and help us find our way out.
Ooh, seven thinkers, huh? That sounds intense. Who are we talking about here?
So we've got Byung-Chul Han, Jean Baudrillard, let's see, Slavoj Žižek.
Wow, those are some big names. Okay, so we've got these seven thinkers, these, like you said, tools. What exactly are they tools for?
Well, think of it this way. They're each giving us a different map for navigating this modern maze.
Okay, I like that. Seven maps for seven different ways to escape. I'm intrigued.
Exactly.
So where do we start? Which map are we pulling out first?
Let's kick things off with Byung-Chul Han and his idea of the burnout society. I don't know about you, but I feel this constant pressure to achieve, to optimize myself, like I'm competing against my own
Oh
shadow.
my gosh, yes. It's like we're all on this hamster wheel of achievement and we can't get off.
And that's exactly what Han is talking about. It's this thing he calls the achievement society.
hmm
And it's all fueled by this, well, in a nutshell, this ideology that prioritizes free markets and competition.
So, like, it's every man for himself.
Well, yeah, kind of. It's this idea that we're all individual entrepreneurs responsible for our own success no matter what circumstances we were born into.
And then you add social media on top of all that,
Oh, yeah.
where everyone's curating these perfect, successful lives.
Right. And suddenly you're not just competing with your neighbor, you're competing with like everyone on the planet.
hmm
And Han argues that this constant pressure to achieve, that's what leads to burnout, anxiety, and just this general sense of emptiness.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
Oh, and he's got this one quote that really stuck with me. It's pretty chilling, actually. He says, "The depressed subject is that achievement subject who, in the end, can achieve nothing more."
Wow. Okay, that's a lot. So, if we're all stuck in this burnout society, what's the way out? What's the antidote?
Well, Han's solution is something he calls slow living.
Slow living.
Ugh.
What does that even mean?
It's about intentionally stepping back from this whole like cult of achievement and creating space for things like rest, reflection, and genuine connection with others.
So, like ditching our phones and living off the grid.
No, no, not necessarily. It's more about these small intentional shifts.
hmm
Like instead of reaching for your phone first thing in the morning, how about spending 5 minutes just focusing on your breath?
Okay, so baby steps. I can get behind that.
Exactly.
All right, so Han's all about slowing down. What's next? Which map are we pulling out now?
Well, buckle up because we're going down the rabbit hole with Jean Baudrillard and his ideas about hyperreality.
Hyperreality. Okay, now that sounds trippy. What is that exactly?
Think about like reality TV shows. You know how they kind of manipulate events to make things seem more dramatic than real life?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Well, that's Baudrillard's hyperreality in action. It's a world where simulations become more real than real.
So it's like we're living in a hall of mirrors, and it's hard to tell which reflection is actually, the genuine one.
Exactly. And this can lead to a feeling of detachment from everything. Like it's hard to find meaning or authenticity. You're not even sure what's real anymore.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So how do we break free from this hyper reality? Do we all need to, like, ditch technology and go live in the woods?
No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
What Baudrillard suggests is seeking out what he calls symbolic exchange. Basically, those interactions that have meaning beyond just the purely transactional.
Symbolic exchange. So, like, what? Can you give me an example?
Sure, it could be something as simple as, volunteering your time, or maybe engaging in some kind of creative pursuit, or even just having a deep conversation with a friend.
Gotcha. So anything that connects us to something real and meaningful beyond just the surface level.
Exactly. It's about finding those things that ground us in reality and
Yeah.
remind us what truly matters.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connections here. So we've got Han urging us to slow down, and now Baudrillard is pushing us to, like, deconstruct hyperreality.
Right.
And we've still got, what, like five more thinkers to go?
5 more maps to explore, and believe me, it gets even more interesting from here.
Okay, well, I'm hooked. Bring on the next map.
All right, let's bring in Slavoj Žižek, known for his unique and often provocative takes on ideology.
Ejek. Now, he's a bit of a wild card, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. He's definitely not afraid to challenge the status quo. but his insights are, well, they're pretty mind-blowing.
All right, I'm ready to have my mind blown. What's Eject's take on all this?
So he argues that ideology isn't just like overt propaganda, like something we can easily identify. It's more like this invisible framework that shapes how we see the world, often without us even realizing it.
Okay, so it's like it's in the air we breathe, but we don't even notice it.
Exactly. And he actually uses the movie The Matrix as an analogy.
Oh, I love The Matrix. Okay, I'm really intrigued now.
Well, Eject's point is that we're all kind of plugged into this system of beliefs, this matrix, that dictates how we think and feel and act.
Whoa, okay, so we're like Neo living in this simulated reality.
Well, sort of. The point is that we need to become aware of these ideologies operating in our lives and start to, like, critically examine them, to ask ourselves, whose interests are being served by these belief systems.
That's a really good point. So it's about questioning the assumptions we often take for granted.
Exactly.
And speaking of questioning assumptions, let's talk about Mark Fisher and his concept of capitalist realism.
All right, this is a heavy one. Fisher argues that we're living in a time where it feels like there's no alternative to capitalism. Even if we don't like its effects, we just can't imagine anything else.
Capitalist realism, huh?
Yeah, he's got this really stark quote where he says, "It is easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism."
Wow. Okay, so we're all just stuck in this system, even if it feels like it's, failing us.
Well, that's the feeling he's describing. But Fisher actually sees a lot of potential in, like, reclaiming our collective imagination.
Reclaiming our imagination. How do we do that?
He suggests we need to rediscover our ability to envision and create alternative futures.
Okay, I like that. It's not just about complaining about the system, it's about actively imagining something better.
Exactly. And that could look like so many different things. Supporting subversive art, fostering communities based on cooperation rather than competition, or even just reclaiming public spaces for collective action.
So it's about refusing to accept the status quo and actually working towards a better future. I'm sensing a theme here with these thinkers, a call to, like, wake up and challenge the way things are.
Yeah, definitely. Each one of them is offering a different way to hack the modern matrix and create a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
And we're only halfway through our list of thinkers.
That's right. Next, we'll dive into the world of Emile Cioran, the master of philosophical pessimism.
Okay, now that sounds intriguing. Philosophical pessimism, huh? I'm ready for it.
Well, get ready for a wild ride. But before we do, let's give our listeners a moment to digest all this. Which of these thinkers' ideas feels the most relevant to your experience so far?
Yeah, take a minute to think about it. And we'll be back in part 2 with even more mind-bending insights from Cioran, Michael Sandel, and Philip Goff. See you then. All right, welcome back. So last time, remember we were navigating that modern matrix, and we had some, let's say, some heavy hitters like Han, Baudrillard, Ujek, and Fisher.
Oh, yeah, definitely some deep thinkers. They really got us thinking about, like, how to break free from this burnout culture, see through hyperreality, and, like, challenge those hidden ideologies.
Absolutely. And now we're going to throw a little curveball. We're going to dive into the world of Emile Cioran, the king of, wait for it, philosophical pessimism. Philosophical pessimism? Okay, now that sounds intense. I actually remember reading this one Cioran quote, and it said, "To be born is to be burdened." Kind of downer, right?
Right. Pretty bleak stuff. But here's the thing. Soren's pessimism isn't about, like, just wallowing in despair. It's about something he calls radical honesty.
Radical honesty. Okay,
It's,
I'm listening.
it's about confronting the inherent absurdity of life head on.
Yeah.
That we're all just these tiny specks in this vast and different universe.
Yeah, I get that. But how does focusing on the negative, even if it's, honest, how does that actually help us escape the modern matrix?
Well, because Cioran argues that by acknowledging the absurdity of existence, we can actually find a strange kind of liberation. It's about letting go of this illusion of control and embracing the chaos.
Embrace the chaos. That sounds a little risky.
Well, think about it this way. Cioran was a big fan of the Stoic philosophers. They believed that, we should focus on what we can control, our own thoughts and actions, and then accept everything else with, like, a sense of detachment.
So it's about finding a sense of humor in the darkness.
Yeah, exactly. Cioran actually believed that laughter is one of the most powerful weapons against despair.
Okay, I like that. So don't cry because it's over, laugh because it happened, right?
Right. Find the irony in our struggles. Don't take ourselves too seriously.
This actually reminds me of this time I completely bombed an important presentation at work. I was like mortified at first, but then I just started laughing at how badly I'd messed up, and it actually helped.
There you go. See? That's it right there.
Yeah, it's like acknowledging the absurdity of the situation kind of gave me permission to let go of the embarrassment.
Exactly. And, Sioran also believed that art is a really powerful tool for transcending despair. He saw art as a way to, like, create meaning in a meaningless world, to find beauty in the chaos.
So, art as a form of rebellion against the absurd. I like that.
Right. And now, I think it's time to shift gears a bit. Let's explore Michael Sandel's ideas about justice and the common good.
Okay, Sandal, what's his take?
Well, Sandel is concerned about this erosion of civic virtues, things like empathy and compassion, and this dominance of what he calls market logic in our society. He thinks we've become too focused on individual achievement and kind of lost sight of our shared responsibility to each other.
I can definitely see that. It's like everything's become so transactional these days.
Yeah, and Sandel argues that we need to revive these civic virtues, things like empathy, compassion, a sense of shared purpose. He's especially critical of what he calls the tyranny of meritocracy.
The tyranny of meritocracy, what does that mean?
Well, it's this idea that, success is solely the result of individual talent and hard work. But it ignores all these systemic factors that, create advantages and disadvantages for people.
It's like that saying, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but it totally ignores the fact that some people are born with boots and some aren't.
Exactly. And Sandel suggests that, we need to create more spaces for dialogue, deliberation, where people from all different backgrounds can, come together and talk about the common good. And he also advocates for strengthening social safety nets and investing in public goods, like education and healthcare, things that benefit everyone.
So it's about recognizing that we're all interconnected, that we're all in this together.
Absolutely. And now, get ready, because we're going to wrap up this episode with Philip Goff. He's got some really radical ideas about consciousness. This is where things get really mind-blowing.
Okay, lay it on me. I'm ready to have my mind blown.
All right, so Goff is a proponent of something called panpsychism. It's the idea that consciousness isn't just limited to brains, but it's actually a fundamental property of reality itself.
Whoa, hold on. So you're saying that everything has some degree of consciousness? Like even my coffee cup?
Yeah, that's kind of what he's suggesting. Think of it this way. Imagine if your phone, right, didn't just process information, but actually had a tiny bit of awareness.
Yeah.
Like it could actually experience things.
Wow, okay, that's a lot to take in. So you're saying it's not just humans who have this inner world of thoughts and feelings.
Right. Goff argues that this materialist worldview that dominates science, it's kind of blinded us to the possibility that consciousness might be way more widespread than we think.
Okay, so how does this idea of panpsychism, how does that help us escape the modern matrix?
Well, Goff's panpsychism challenges us to see the world in a totally different way. It encourages us to recognize the interconnectedness of all things and, appreciate that inherent value in everything around us.
It's like taking the red pill in the matrix, right?
Yeah.
Seeing the code of reality in a whole new light.
Exactly. Goff's work opens up this whole new realm of possibilities. It's like he's inviting us to question everything we thought we knew about reality.
So from the burnout society to hyperreality, the critique of ideology, the embrace of the absurd, the call for civic virtues, and now this mind-blowing concept of panpsychism. Wow. Each one of these thinkers is giving us a different tool for, like, hacking the modern matrix.
And now, in the final part of this deep dive, we're going to explore how we can actually apply all of these insights to our own lives. Because knowledge is only powerful when we put it into action.
All right, so we've spent the last two parts of this deep dive, really exploring these seven thinkers and their perspectives on, well, escaping this modern matrix.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, that's for sure.
We have. But now comes I think, the real challenge, right? How do we take all these sometimes pretty abstract ideas and actually make them actionable in our daily lives? Where do we even begin?
It's a great question. And, it can feel overwhelming, for sure, trying to apply all these concepts at once. But the good news is you don't have to do everything at once.
Okay, so like baby steps. What would
Yeah.
be a good first step?
Well, think of it like building a muscle. You start with small weights, and you gradually increase the resistance over time. Same thing with applying these ideas. Start small, build consistency, and then, gradually challenge yourself more and more.
Okay, I like that. A mental workout routine for escaping the matrix. So where do we start with our, mental weightlifting?
Well, let's go back to Byung-Chul Han and his concept of slow living.
Right, slow living. How do we actually slow down in a world that feels like it's constantly speeding up?
Han actually suggests something really simple. He says we should create what he calls islands of stillness in our day. So, like, instead of immediately reaching for your phone first thing in the morning, how about spending 5 minutes just focusing on your breath? Or maybe designate one evening a week as digital detox, no screens allowed.
Oh, I like that. A digital detox. It's like a forced break from all the noise. I'm definitely guilty of that morning phone grab, though. I need to work on that. What about Baudrillard's advice on, was it deconstructing hyperreality?
Oh, yeah, that one's a little trickier, but Baudrillard encourages us to cultivate what he calls symbolic exchange. Basically, those interactions that have meaning beyond, like, just the purely transactional.
Right, symbolic exchange.
Mhm.
So, like, what would that look like in real life?
It could be as simple as having a face-to-face conversation with a friend instead of just texting, or maybe volunteering your time for a cause you care about.
So, finding ways to connect with something real, something meaningful outside of just, the digital world.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. And this kind of reminds me of Ejik's challenge to, ideology. How do we actually start to question those deep-seated beliefs that shape our worldview?
Hmm, that's a good question. Ejek would probably say, start by paying attention to your gut reactions.
Mhm.
Like what makes you uncomfortable? What
Mm.
makes you angry? Those emotional responses can actually be clues to underlying ideologies that you may not even be aware of.
So it's like shining a light on those hidden assumptions and biases that are kind of running in the background of our minds.
Exactly. And once you see them, then you can start to like dismantle them and create something new.
Yeah, okay. And that kind of ties into Mark Fisher and his idea of capitalist realism, right? How do we break free from the feeling that there's like no alternative to the current system?
Well, Fisher was a huge believer in the power of collective action. He argued that, by joining forces with other like-minded people, we can create spaces where alternative futures can actually be imagined and even like enacted. It could be supporting local businesses, engaging in political activism, or even just having those tough conversations with friends and family about the kind of world we want to live in.
So it's about like refusing to accept the status quo and actively working towards something better, even if it feels impossible.
Exactly. And it's about, like you said, having those uncomfortable conversations, challenging those assumptions.
Okay, I like that. So we've covered Han, Baudrillard, Zizek, and Fisher.
Yeah.
And what about Sioran? How do we apply his, let's say, unique perspective on, the absurdity of life?
Well, Siren would say, don't take yourself too seriously.
Ah, easier said than done.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But he's got a point. Life is full of these contradictions, these paradoxes. Learn to laugh at the absurdity of it all. It can actually be a really powerful antidote to anxiety and despair.
Okay, so find the humor in the chaos. I can get behind that.
Absolutely. It's like a pressure valve,
Yeah.
It lets off some of the steam.
Right, right. What about Sandel's ideas on civic virtue and the common good? How do we actually put those into practice?
Sandal's a big advocate for getting involved in your community. Volunteer your time, attend town hall meetings, join a local organization that aligns with your values. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected and that our individual actions have ripple effects on everyone around us.
So it's about shifting from a me mindset to a we mindset. That's a big one.
Hmm.
Okay, and finally, Goff. His idea of panpsychism is, well, it's a lot to wrap your head around. How do we integrate this idea that, consciousness is everywhere into our daily lives?
Well, Goff's work is really an invitation to cultivate this sense of awe and wonder towards the world around us.
Mm.
Take some time to appreciate the beauty and complexity of nature, practice mindfulness, and pay attention to those subtle ways that consciousness manifests itself in your everyday experiences.
So it's about shifting our perspective from seeing the world as like a collection of objects to recognizing it as this vibrant web of interconnected consciousness. I like that.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective can have a really profound impact on how we relate to, well, ourselves, to others, and even to the planet.
So we've come full circle. We started this deep dive feeling kind of trapped, in the modern matrix. But through exploring these seven thinkers, I think we've discovered a whole toolkit for navigating its challenges and maybe even, creating a more meaningful life on the other side. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. And remember, it's not about, reaching some kind of final destination. It's about those small steps we take each day, cultivating awareness, challenging assumptions, and living in alignment with our values.
Well said. And thanks to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the modern matrix. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and, maybe even some inspiration for your own journey.